So the next question that I have is that we know that there is complex data around everywhere. We are surrounded by complex data. It's not just a straightforward table data. It's a complex data, and then the volumes of this complex data is also a huge. Sometimes it is overwhelming data. So when it comes to that, how do you see the data analysts, or the visualization experts prioritize what information to project, what information to probably keep it at a next level? How do they, look into it? And such as, if I just give you an example of it, a complex data of the trading between one organization and then several of the other organizations, and it could be millions of transactions of it, and millions of products and services that you are actually providing to each other. I mean, in that case, building a dashboard stating that how many products have you procured from which supplier, how much of it, or it could be that how much of the spend on what kind of service categories, because it could be hundreds of service categories. So this is a
Right.
complex kind of thing. So how do you suggest the data analysts or the data practitioners or the storytellers practice this?
Sure. That's a very, very good question. An excellent question, Dr. Ahmad. I how shall I put this? Okay. Before people dive into their data, all right, it is
Right.
essential to go ahead and define your objectives, right? That
Mhm.
is, have a clear understanding of what exactly it is that you're trying to achieve ahead of time with your data visualization. You have to ask yourself some questions. Things like,
Right.
what story am I trying to tell? What insights do I want my audience to walk away with? Okay, by
Right.
defining these objectives ahead of time, up front now, you can filter out any data that, well, it doesn't contribute directly to your narrative, at least from the first view. Okay, this first view, this focused view on your end goal, that's going to be your guiding principle, and it's going to help you to sift through your data more efficiently. Okay,
Right.
so once this objective of yours is clearly defined, the next thing I would do is identify the core data points that are going to
Okay.
drive your data visualization in expediting these objectives. These are pieces of information that are the most relevant to your narrative, and they're the
Right.
ones that they're going to have the most significant impact on your audience. For example, if your goal is to, say, showcase trends over time, all right, your primary focus might be on time series data rather than individual data points. Okay, honing in on these key elements along those points
Right.
will help you to reduce complexity, and it's going to make your visualization much more powerful. Make it easier to understand. That's the bottom line. Dr. Ahmad, data often comes with redundancy. We know that. I'm talking about things like multiple data sets, as you expressed, numerous variables that essentially convey the same information. One of the most effective ways to simplify your data visualization, the process, I mean, of putting it together, is to identify and eliminate these redundancies again up front. Not only
Right.
does this end up streamlining your work in the long run, but it'll also help you to avoid cluttering your data visualization with a
Right.
whole bunch of unnecessary information. And nobody wants that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, okay, each data point that you include needs to serve a unique purpose. And you know
Right.
what? If it doesn't, then you're not prioritizing. If it doesn't, then you can safely take it out. You do
Right,
not
right.
want to overwhelm your viewer with extraneous detail. Prioritize. Now, to keep that from happening, that is to
Yeah.
keep your visualization clear and concise with prioritized data, it's important to make sure you choose the right chart type. I'd suggest using some kind of a chart chooser tool. One example I like is Dr. Andrew Abella's Chart Chooser, one of my favorites. See, using such a tool can help you to choose the most appropriate chart for both your data and your message, both of which are equally important. Again, ask yourself questions. Am I comparing among items or am I comparing over time? If it's among items, well, then you might use a pie chart or a donut chart, but only if you don't have more than, say, 4 or 5 items, 6 at the very most. Am I comparing categories? Well, then a bar graph might be best. Do I need to show trends over time? Well, then use a line chart. Am I exploring relationships between variables? Then use a scatter plot. Am I trying to identify patterns in, say, large data sets with many variables? Well, if so, consider using a heat map, right? Heat maps are a great way to visualize correlations and identify any outliers you might have. Okay, here, my point, Dr. Ahmad, as data becomes increasingly complex, it's only going to be more so. From your perspective, sir, how do you say that corporations and other organizations can balance the need for detailed analysis with the need to get these actionable insights that we've been talking about? Or put it another way, how do you think we can make sure that our visualizations are not just simply informative, but perhaps go farther and drive business decisions?